This week on the Patreon, I had the distinct pleasure of having Comics by Perch join me for the Doc Q&A. Normally, Doc and I do about a 2.5-hour podcast answering questions from all the Patreon backers. This week, Perch was available, decided to join me. I picked out 4 or 5 questions that Perch and I talked about that I thought were really good, really relevant stuff. You'll see who asked the question and all that kind of stuff. If you do decide to come join us on the Patreon, there is a link in the video description. You get a superhero name, you get a city you get to protect, and certainly you get to submit questions to myself, Doc, all that kind of good stuff. Had lots of fun. You know, Perch used to be kind of a staple of the channel. We would do a lot of videos together. Unfortunately, we do have things going on with our lives lately that have kind of precluded that. So I did want to share this because we had a great time, had a lot of fun answering all these questions. There will be chapters for every single question. So if you want to go through and kind of find the question that you're most interested in, feel free to do that. Really appreciate that. And I hope you do enjoy this kind of retro video with Wes and Perch getting together and talking about some comic stuff. So now that we're almost at the end of the first year of the Ultimate Universe 2.0, how do you feel Marvel has handled it? I have read Ultimate Spider-Man and Black Panther. I dropped Ultimates and Ultimate X-Men after issues 1 and 2. You will say that Ultimate Spider-Man 9 and 10, I was bored to death in, while Black Panther I do honestly love. I was wondering how you feel this will lead into year 2 of the experiment.
I think they're going to just start to cross them over more. The sales, I think, are doing all right, but they're starting to kind of dip a little bit. So they're going to try and put them together a little bit, have the toys play with each other. I think it's dull. I agree. I like Black Panther the best from a story that's actually got some momentum to it. It feels like that is moving. I like Ultimate X-Men as long as I completely forget it's X-Men. It's like reading a manga series. It's enjoyable when I think about it that way. I'm not a fan of Ultimates. I'm sorry. I don't.
That's my favorite book out right now.
Really? I'm not enjoying that at all.
Every issue he makes some moral stance. That's the easiest moral stance to make, and he acts like he's really done something. It's great.
Okay. All right. I see what you're saying there. You don't actually enjoy it.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I love it because of how bad it is. Dennis Camp is like, he's number 1 in my book.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. No, I don't like that comic at all. And look, it's fun for Peter to be with MJ in the Ultimate Spider-Man story, but you gotta you gotta move that one along, anything, please.
That last issue when the entire thing was Ben Parker and J. Jonah Jameson like being kind of snarky dickheads, you know, because they know that something's happening and their pen name is Ben Reilly. And that was the big payoff. I was like, I've never been this limp for Ultimate Spider-Man. You just completely ruined anything that could have been exciting.
We've had a few of those. I mean, we had the restaurant
date issue.
Yeah. I mean, just come on, get some, do something. It's funny because I compare a lot of comics these days to what Kirkman did with Invincible. And I've read that series over a few times, and you have a lot that goes on in every issue, and they manage to do relationship stuff and date nights and other things in addition to actually making the comic feel like it's going somewhere. I mean, it's like the amount of decompression right now and in a lot of the Ultimate comics, a lot of comics in general, just over the top.
Have you realized that Ultimate Spider-Man has yet to win a fight?
Yeah, I mean, he's barely had a fight.
He's had 3. He fought Shocker? I think it's Shocker. He fought Kingpin and almost died, and then he fought Harry there for a minute. Well, I guess there's 4 because they did fight a little bit with Black Cat.
Yeah, but these are a couple pages of fights. Mm-hmm. Like you could, I believe, and maybe I'm incorrect in this, but I think you could take all the pages where a fight was happening and it wouldn't fill a 22-page comic, a single one.
Yeah, and we're almost a year into it. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it is. At the end of the day, it is the superhero genre. You actually do need the superheroes to be superheroes and fight. That is kind of the point.
Was it the Ian Malcolm? Eventually, there will be dinosaurs on your dinosaur park, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I love, and I know some people watch both of our shows who are into it right now. I love Ranma. I love Rumiko Takahashi. I love that slice of life type stuff. I love it, but I know I'm going in to a slice of life comic. When I'm going into a comic with Spider-Man and it's, Ranma has more action to it, that seems backwards.
And that's why I stopped reading X-Men. I was like, it says X-Men. Why is this not an X-Men book? And, I gave it 6 issues and I was like, it's just, for what it is, it's fine. But I do feel like I've been duped on the title.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think the Peach Momoko X-Men, the Ultimate X-Men book, its biggest drawback is that it's got the X-Men logo on it. I mean,
Yeah,
and
I think we do fine without it.
It can, and you've got characters in there who have never been X-Men. I mean, you could have it be mutants, you could have it be gifted, you could have it be ultimate gifted mutants, whatever you want to do. But
somebody said it should have been the Runaways.
Yeah, that would have been perfectly good too. Probably got more attention, quite frankly. A Peach Momoko Ultimate Runaways probably would have done better.
Yes, it's been a little weird.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not weird because Jonathan Hickman does like to do the world building, and sometimes he just kind of sits there and squats.
Yeah, he's no pun intended. That's right.
Perch, you made a recent video about Magneto being better as a hero or a villain. While nothing can change my mind that Magneto is a villain who commits mass murder and various atrocities that are irredeemable, it brings up the notion of the difficulties many modern writers have with the all too common humanization of villains. No one can just be evil. It's gray areas lately. What damage do you feel this is doing to the heroes of the comics who now have to fight these sympathetic bad characters?
I mean, I think it's been devastating. I think that's probably the single biggest thing in terms of the plot that has hurt comics completely is the value of Magneto was for a long time, he was a villain, but they wrote in enough that it's like, well, but here's what happened to him during the Holocaust. And here's where his ideas are not wrong, just maybe too extreme. And here's what kind of a few different events would mean to somebody like Charles Xavier, everything else. And unfortunately, everyone has that story now. They've done sympathetic stories for Apocalypse and Sinister and and the Red Skull. Like, I mean, at some point you're like, Jesus. And when you have every villain have but there's actually a humanizing twist of fate that got them here, then you have no real conflict in the fight. You can't go where you want to go as a writer. You can't express true villainy, and there's always some out. And I think what we've seen in comics is it's pushed them now to have lots of fights against villains who are just faceless, I guess representing Trump voters or whatever. It's like it's you have the Ghost Rider go up against protesters, and it's absurd because you've been building the power levels of these heroes at the same time. So now you get, there was that issue where it was Robbie Reese against a bunch of kind of anti-immigration protesters. And this isn't a fight. This is a fight that's taken care of in one panel. If they're truly running around causing trouble, he burns them alive and then he's done. I mean, it's literally a very quick fight, but you've got to somehow drag it out. So now the heroes look stupider and weaker as a result. Yeah, they're like, we don't kill, but the whole thing is just dumb. And we saw that play out in that how the Krakoa era of the X-Men went down, where a lot of the fights are X-Men against kind of randos.
Murdering Orcus left and right.
Yeah, and they're murdering them. They're like, well, they're fascists, so it's okay. And then they're like, okay, well, we're running out of humans, so now we're just going to throw random robots at people. And the X-Men are like, well, here's the Brood. And you're like, oh, what is even going on at this point? So I think all of this stuff is a problem, and you should let villains be great again.
Also, he ends up with a lot of heroes fighting heroes, which I am so done with. It's not even funny.
Yeah, I mean, you really have kind of four tropes that they continue to go back to. You've got the heroes have to fight each other. And you've got the villain is actually not quite the villain that we thought he was. So they're actually a good guy. And you keep bouncing between these same stories over and over and over again. And it's not exciting. There's no reason to buy a comic at this point for the same story.
That's why I'm a fan of Arcade. They've never tried to humanize him. He's still a piece of crap.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't read all the Avengers Undercover comics then, I guess.
I didn't. What? I missed it? Oh
no. Sure. They talked about how he was kind of abused as a kid, and the parents were mean, and it caused him to be this way. And I'm seriously,
he murdered his parents because they stopped giving him an allowance. Like that's pretty evil.
I agree with you.
Great.
I look. I don't think there's a single villain in the Marvel universe, and somebody will tell you, but all of these villains have had some kind of tragic backstory that explains why they're dicks.
I'm really enjoying the start of the all-in phase of DC. Books have been fairly solid and at least interesting enough to make me look forward to the next issue. Do you think this approach will last, or will we get a new approach in another year when the next event screws it up all up again?
I think it'll last longer than a year. I mean, it will depend on the sales. If the sales respond and this thing holds, then they'll run it for as long as they can milk it. That said, I think the first time they do an event, that's where it's all going to go sideways.
It does seem to destroy a lot of stuff, but I'm fine with All In. I didn't love Dan Waters' Nightwing, but I didn't hate it. So I'll come back for that. I thought Phil Kennedy Johnson's Batman and Robin was a major improvement. I think Josh Williamson, his latest issue of Superman was probably the best thing he's done in maybe like 6 months or a little bit longer. I think Green Lantern's good. I was a little surprised by how boring Green Arrow was, but it wasn't a full story. So I'm kind of on board with this. Even the Tom Taylor, who I don't like as a writer, I thought his first issue of Detective was a major improvement over Ram V.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're trying. We're seeing right now the fruits of a lot of planning and labor to get us to this point. So the question is going to come 4 issues from now. Are the books going to have the same energy? The thing that they need to avoid is not having these books go into heavy decompression mode. Like, they've got to move. Like, we should see in 6 months, a lot should happen in all these titles. And if they feel like they're taking a slowest possible path to get there, that's what's going to kill this line.
That's what it feels like on Ultimate Universe over at Marvel, is that they're just waiting for the maker to come back. So they don't want to do anything interesting until then.
Yeah. I mean, it has the feeling of just killing time. And I think that kills books.
I'm happy with All In. I don't think it's great. It's not DC Rebirth, but it's certainly better than what they've been doing.
Yeah. No complaints. I mean, they've got to try.
Nobody's talking about it, but.
Yeah. But just the thing with comics and for the people who build this stuff is be patient. Like, literally be patient. It will, when you put something new into motion, it takes months for it to, the buzz to build and everything come in. So what I see from DC a lot is they'll try something. It's not bad. 6 months later, the world hasn't completely changed. They're like, all right, scrap it. Let's do something new. And it's like the comic industry
like
moves
Flash.
forward. Yeah.
And they'd already announced that he was leaving, even though he was doing an event to end it. And by the time it was time for him to leave, the Flash sales had rebounded.
Yeah, that's right. No, you got to let these, like, the comic industry move slow.
Where do you see the comic book industry in 2 years from now, Perch?
I think DC will be very much. I mean, they'll keep going with what they're doing. I think the All In thing will still be going 2 years from now. I think the Absolute Universe will be heading towards some big event where everything crosses over, and I think there will be a lot of pressure to tie it into some of the movies, assuming that James Gunn stuff is working. And so I think DC will look a little bit like Marvel back in, say, 2012, 2013, kind of that moment where they're trying to get simultaneously.
Right where they destroyed everything?
Yes, right before they destroyed everything. But I think there will be this drive to kind of get synergy with the movies, and so that's going to be kind of what's going on with DC. And then Marvel, I just don't know. Like, Marvel is really stuck in a rut, like a bad rut right now, and they're putting out stuff, but there's a lack of acknowledgement at the Marvel side that it's not working. There's no big momentum or energy around what they have. And I'm not sure. Marvel needs a far more major reset. I do think Cebulski's probably out in 2 years, and maybe somebody comes in who's, going to kind of right the ship or do something more dramatic, but Marvel needs just heavy intervention and stat.
Yeah, because they are a lot of times just playing a shell game. It's like, well, we got a problem with X-Men. We'll move our Avengers guy over. The other guy that was helping out with the Avengers into the Avengers. We'll move Jordan White over on special projects, and nothing will get better.
Yeah, it is the, and you hate to say it this way, but it's the shuffling deck chairs kind of feeling of what's going on. Now, it's weird to say that, and people don't acknowledge it. And frankly, this is why it keeps happening. Marvel is number one. But the momentum of these things, it will change. And the problem is, if you let too much of that momentum die, then it's going to change in a pretty bad way for Marvel. Like, once it slides, it will then stay in like a 5-year rut, kind of like what you saw with New 52, where for a couple of years, DC was dominating Marvel.
Do you think the indies are going to keep growing and growing, or can indies really grow anything without a healthy Marvel?
No, they need a healthy Marvel. I mean, sad to say.
I think that's the one thing holding everything back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because you have the franchises that are known on the indie scene. You got Transformers, G.I. Joe. You got some upstart stuff going on, obviously, with Ghost Machine. You have known quantities like Miller World all doing well, but you need that big push from the actual market leader.
You do. Yeah. No, I mean, the industry revolves around Marvel and to a lesser extent DC. So if they're doing healthy, comic stores are doing healthy, people are a little bit more, risky to order things and put stuff in. But if Marvel is in a kind of malaise, then it trickles down. What indies need is to figure out a way that their futures are completely decoupled
Bypass.
from Marvel. Yeah. Get into other places, get into other shops. That's why I love
You
the
think
comic.
they should go manga format, go to the bookstore chain?
Yeah, 100%. They need to be doing
Change
that.
the size and everything.
Yeah, figure out how to do digital and e-commerce well, so you have digital comics out there for people to buy it, but also like how can you drop ship stuff direct to consumer? Is there a way that you could put some of your products up on Amazon and talk about format and get them direct out? I love the comic shop, obviously, history with comics and retail, but the indies need to make it so that whether Marvel succeeds or fails, it is irrelevant to them.
You are always very even balanced when you do your discussions on a lot of comics. However, can we get one comic that came out recently that you would like to crap all over how it came out? This is a small Patreon who would hear it. So please just this once, go 2 minutes without restraint and go full unadulterated Perch on a bad book.
I mean, NYX was easily the biggest piece of shit. And I don't know why Colin Kelly and Lansing are getting any work at all. These guys can't put anything out that resembles a coherent story. It's just the most awful writing. Closely followed by that Iron Man #1 is just, I don't know who is, I don't even know what the fuck you're doing. You put in the most basic, tired Iron Man story of all the tropes from the last 10 years, regurgitated, and somehow managed to suck the fun out of every panel of it. Like you weren't even doing the greatest hits well. It was just it's a cover band doing Metallica. I don't know what analogy I want to give there. No, those comics are awful. Exceptional X-Men was awful. The entire state of the X-Men universe is bad. Jed MacKay is a decent writer, but he's ruining whatever kind of good credibility he has by doing this. Gail Simone can't get over her own silly humor. I just, as an X-Men fan, this is the worst fucking timeline of all. These comics suck. The Avengers is dull. You've got these major characters right now inside of Marvel doing this stuff. I'm looking for the bright spot in a lot of these universes, and you get things
Incredible
like
Hulk.
Yeah, Incredible Hulk is good. X-Force is good, but X-Force, quite frankly, and no disrespect to Jeff, X-Force should be the worst book of the bunch with the current storyline, and it is the best, and that is a indication of how absolute shit everything is.
Gail Simone's voice for Rogue is probably the worst thing I've ever read in my life.
I mean,
she sounds retarded.
Yeah, no, it's not a good writer. It simultaneously just feels cringy old, and I mean just old. That's what it feels. It feels old. And the X-Men needs to be a cool, great book. I did the video of which franchise has been destroyed the most. Somebody asked that question, and it's unquestionably the X-Men. The X-Men printed money once upon a time. Just printed money.
Not just one book. It would be 4 books printing money.
Oh yeah, like they could do no wrong. So for all the people out there who's bitching about Kathleen Kennedy and whatever she's doing to Star Wars, it pales in comparison to the absolute mismanagement of the X-Men line.
Now, as far as Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing, I'd heard behind the scenes from a couple of people that they were in consideration for Amazing Spider-Man to take over after Joe Kelly and Justina Ireland's over. That's off the table, thankfully.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I've heard
that would be the worst decision ever.
Yeah, I heard the same thing, that they were being considered for it. I think the current writer on it is more short term, but I don't know.
I do want to say thank you very much to Perch for joining me this weekend. We had a lot of fun doing the podcast. Those are some of the questions that we did. We ended up going about 2.5 hours, so there's a lot more that we ended up answering. I think it ended up being like 40 questions in total. Had lots of fun doing that. Hope you enjoyed it. As I said, this is normally part of the Doc Q&A. And if you're interested in supporting the Patreon, getting the Q&A, Doc Unfiltered, you get the Hot or Not podcast, you get the Geek Fix, you get lots of extra stuff out there, the Comics Guilds, the solicitation analysis. There's a link in the video description. We got 3 different tiers for you to join. If you do back us on Patreon, you get a superhero name, you get a city to protect, and you get a whole lot more access to new and awesome Thing Critical stuff on the Patreon. Hope to see you there very, very soon.